And now we continue. His personal life, another matter of extreme question and extreme debate among Scientologists, ex-Scientologists, and Scientology protesters. Now, I may be getting this info from Wikipedia, but correct me if I'm wrong, Wikipedia is a rather reliable source of info when it can be. Often, you'll see people going on Wikipedia and altering articles, and the information isn't always correct, I will admit that. There may be some things in this article that aren't correct, but most of it is the truth. What I can tell you now is that L. Ron Hubbard is a liar, a cheat, a scammer, and a con artist. And this behavior carried over when he formed the Church of Scientology, and he did form the Church of Scientology. It wasn't the Scientologists that were under him. L. Ron Hubbard was the one that founded the church. I don't care what a Scientologist says. I don't care what he tells you. L. Ron Hubbard was the one that founded it. His personal life is a matter of interest. Continuing, Hubbard claimed that when he was 4 years old, he became the protege of Old Tom, a Blackfeet Indian shaman. In 1985, Scientologists claimed that members of Blackfeet Nation, Montana, commemorated the 17th anniversary of L. Ron Hubbard becoming a blood brother of the Blackfeet Nation. Tree Many Feathers, in a ceremony re-established L. Ron Hubbard as a blood brother to the Blackfeet tribe. Blackfeet historian Hugh Dempsey has commented that the act of blood brotherhood was never done among the Blackfeet, and Blackfeet Nation officials has disavowed any attempts to re-establish Hubbard as a blood brother of the Blackfeet. Former Vice President of the tribe's executive committee, John Yellow Kidney, dismissed the credibility of the letter claiming to re-establish Hubbard as a blood brother. Publicly, Hubbard was sociable and charming. Privately, he wrote entries in his notebook like, "All men are your slaves," and "You can be merciless whenever your will is crossed, and you have the right to be merciless." After a 1940 sailing trip that ended with engine trouble on his yacht, he began a 3-month stay in Ketchikan, Alaska. Hubbard worked as the host of a popular maritime radio show where he was known as the charismatic storyteller. Hubbard was also interested in and talented at hypnosis. How ironic. And biographer Russell Miller mentions several incidents, including a cruel post-hypnotic prank recalled by writer A.E. von Vogt, which suggests that Hubbard sometimes used his hypnotic talents capriciously on his unsuspecting subjects. During this same period, just after World War II, Hubbard was financially destitute and suffered from feelings of depression as well as suicidal thoughts, according to a letter he wrote in 1947 requesting assistance from Veterans Affairs. Toward the end of my service, I avoided out of pride any mental examinations, hoping that the time would balance my mind, with which I had a reason to suppose was seriously affected. I cannot account for, nor rise above, long periods of moroseness and suicidal inclinations, and have newly come to realize that I must first triumph above this before I can hope to rehabilitate myself at all. For someone who claims to hate psychiatrists and psychology, he sure headed toward the Veterans Affairs office pretty damn quick, especially since it was for a mental illness. Hubbard's first wife was Margaret Polly Grubb, whom he married in 1933 and who bore him 2 children, L. Ron Jr., also known as Ronald DeWolf, we'll get into him later, and Catherine May, born in 1936. They lived in Los Angeles, California, and during the late 1930s and 40s in Bremerton, Washington. In a 1983 interview for Penthouse magazine that he later retracted, DeWolf said, "According to him and my mother, he was the result of a failed abortion and recalls at 6 years old seeing his father performing an abortion on his mother with a coat hanger." In the same interview, he said Scientology is a power and money and intelligence gathering game, and described his father as only interested in money, sex, booze, and drugs. Nice messiah, Scientology. Later, in a sworn affidavit, DeWolf stated that he had weaved stories about his father's harassment of others, that the charge he made about drugs was false, and that the Penthouse story was an example of statements that he deeply regretted and that had caused his father and himself much pain. Before, in 1972, Elron Jr. had signed affidavits declaring the denigrating statements that he made about his father false. Now, this is where it gets interesting. DeWolf, while he claimed that his father was only interested in money, sex, booze, and drugs, and was probably indeed weaving a tale about his father that he didn't necessarily know was true, half of it ended up being true anyways. They found drugs on the boat. He abused these young girls that were with him on the boat, and several other things that I don't really care to mention right now. After the war, in August 1945, Hubbard met Jack Parsons, a researcher at Caltech and an associate of the British intelligence occultist Aleister Crowley. By Crowley's account, Hubbard and Parsons were engaged in the practice of ritual magic in 1946, including an extended set of sex magic rituals called the Babylon Working, intended to summon a goddess or moon child. At this time, Hubbard formed a partnership with Parsons and Betty, which they named Allied Enterprises. To this, Parsons invested $20,970.80. Hubbard invested $1,183.91, and Betty nothing. Hubbard came up with the plan to go to Miami with Betty, purchase 3 yachts, sail them through the Panama Canal, and sell them on the West Coast at a profit. Parsons soon realized that he had his girlfriend and most of his life savings stolen by Hubbard. After an attempt to catch up with Hubbard and following a court settlement, Parsons received only a promissory note for $2,900 from Hubbard. Nice. The church says Hubbard was working on as an Oni agent on a mission to end Parsons' supposed magical activities to rescue a girl Parsons was using for supposedly magic purposes. Okay, so let me get this straight. Hubbard steals Parsons' money, makes off with it, and then tells his church that he was undercover to prevent them from using people just the way that he used Parsons, apparently. Hubbard later married the girl he said that he rescued from Parsons, Sarah Northrop. Crowley recorded in his notes that Hubbard made off with Parsons' money and girlfriend in a confidence trick. I gotta give this guy respect. He's a good con man. Sarah Northrop became Hubbard's second wife in August 1946 while he was still married to Polly, something Sarah did not know at the time. Hubbard left his first wife and children as soon as he left the Navy. Nice, he's dedicated too. And he divorced his first wife more than a year later after he'd remarried. Both women allege Hubbard physically abused them. Later he disowned Alexis, claiming he was not her father and that she was actually Jack Parsons' child. Sarah filed for divorce on 23 April 1951, claiming that Hubbard was still legally bound to his first wife at the time of their marriage. She accused him in her divorce papers of kidnapping their baby daughter Alexis as well as torturing her. On August 1948, Hubbard was arrested and charged for petty theft in East Pasadena, California. Subsequently, he pled guilty and paid a $25 fine. In 1952, Hubbard married his third wife, Mary Sue Whipp, to whom he remained married until his death. Over the next 6 years, Hubbard fathered 4 more children, Diana, Quentin, Suzette, and Arthur. Quentin, born in 1954, was expected to one day replace his father as the head of the Scientology organization. However, Quentin was uninterested in his father's plans and had preferred to become a pilot. He felt guilty about his homosexuality and committed suicide in 1976. Hubbard was prone to self-aggrandizement and exaggeration, and in 1938 he wrote a letter to then-wife Margaret Tolley Grubb reading, "I have high hopes of smashing my name into history so violently that it will take a legendary form even if all the books are destroyed. That goal is the real goal as far as I'm concerned. Well, congratulations, Hubbard. You got your goal, but you're remembered as a tyrant now, not a messiah." In 1984, during the Church of Scientology's lawsuit against Gary Armstrong, Judge Paul G. Breckenridge Jr. described Hubbard as charismatic and highly capable of motivating, organizing, controlling, manipulating, and inspiring his adherents. However, the judge ruled against the church, and in so doing said that the evidence portrays a man who has been virtually pathologically